The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings. It's time for the FedEx Cup playoffs, the first leg. Top 70 players remaining in the standings after the Wyndham Championship are going to TPC Southwind to play in the FedEx St. Jude Championship. There is no cut at this event, only 70 players in the field. And there's a lot of money up for grabs, and only the top 50 advance to the BMW Championship. Only 30 advance to the Tour Championship, so you're going to need to pile up some good weeks if you're not near the top of the standings. 4 times multiplier on FedEx Cup points for the next 2 weeks as well, so keep that in mind when you're trying to see if your guys are going to advance to the next week, depending on the style of game that you're playing. For DraftKings, it's not going to make that big of a difference because there's no cut. You're going to get your 4 rounds from all your guys. At least I think there's no cut. Everything I've read says that there's no cut with the reformatting of the FedEx Cup playoffs. But one thing we know, the PGA Tour, not great at articulating what is happening on their tour. They just like to spring things on us and make that information very difficult to search out. But from everything I can glean, there's going to be no cut this week. There is a listeners league this week, however. You can get that link down in the description right now, fantasynational.com/Mayo to get 20% off. I'll be using Fantasy National for my walkthrough this week, and runthesims.com/Mayo get you 10% off all of the NFL preseason game notes and projected playing time if you want to play some DraftKings lineups or even bet props for the preseason. Plus, getting a subscription also gets you, well, I mean, depending on which one you can get the season, you can get the weekly, you can get the monthly. I just recommend getting the season. Gives you the single game generator. You can run 10,000 simulations, custom simulations in under 5 seconds. So I would highly recommend you do that. And if you use code Mayo, you do get 10% off. So go do that right now if you're interested at all for the NFL for the upcoming season. A few notes from this tournament. I mean, I kind of went through everything right now. We don't know who the final 4 or 5 guys are at the moment because the Wyndham Championship has not yet concluded as I record this. So Justin Thomas could still get in. He could still be on the outside looking in. He's someone who's had success at this course in the past, won this as a WGC. So keep an eye on what's happening at the back end. Obviously, you're going to know that by the time Monday comes around. But this being Sunday, when I'm recording it, I'm not going to have that information. I'll know the top 65-ish. And we'll just, if there's guys, listen, I have it pulled up here in front of me. Let's just kind of go and see what's going on with the FedEx Cup standings at the moment. Boom, there we go. You can see like the final 5 spots right now in real time. It looks like Rye is going to make it. Hostler is going to be on the fringe because he missed the cut at the Wyndham. And then you have like Cam Davis. It still needs to play his way. I mean, he was 69th to start the week. So if he just treads water on Sunday, he'll be fine. Vince Norman, JJ Spawn. But then you got guys, Ben Griffin, I believe he missed the cut. So it would take like Cam Davis or someone falling back out to get to him. Justin Thomas is only 2 spots out. He's like 6 points behind or something like that. And, that's, let's see, actually, what is he? He's 17-ish points behind, so he needs to move up a little bit on the leaderboard, and all of a sudden he's in. Davis Thompson's trying to make a run. That's basically it for everyone. And like if all of a sudden Billy Horschel is not winning anymore, or Lucas Glover and Billy Horschel at the moment as I'm recording this are getting first place points. Both of them can't get first place points. So if it's not Horschel, I believe that he is out of the FedEx Cup playoff. So just different things to monitor. So those guys could be in, they could be out, but we're not too concerned about those guys at the moment moving through. What we want to talk about a little bit is the course. TPC Southwind is the venue for this event, as it has been at the St. Jude over time. It's a par 70 championship Bermuda grass greens, Zoysia grass fairways. You don't see much of that around, but everything has now been replaced with Zoysia grass, so it's a bit spongy, so you're going to have some nice lies if you're in the fairway. Only 25 yards wide for the fairways, but there's water and bunkers everywhere. That's what we're looking at this week when it really comes down to it. We're thinking about keep yourself dry, keep yourself out of the sand, because this really is when we think about strokes gained approach, it being sort of the key to every single tournament, this one in particular kind of stands out above all else. And we can go back and look at the stats and see everything that's happening over the 7,243 yards as a par 70 that we're seeing with Southwind. Don't avoid the huge numbers, because there's huge numbers to be had. When we jump over and take a look at the scorecard, you're going to see that there's a few of the holes that actually have a bogey or double double or worse percentage of like 5% plus. That's all water related. So you got to keep yourself dry. That's step one. Hit your approaches close. Step two, then figure out the rest from there. Just don't make any really horrible decisions. We've seen some bad putters win at this tournament as well over the years. There's 11 holes with water on them. As I mentioned, 75 bunkers scattered throughout the course. So again, just kind of keep that in mind, and we'll do that in terms of the modeling of what we're looking for this week. This show is most definitely not going to be as long as the other ones that we've been doing, because we're really going to focus on making the bets, making the picks. And when you only have 70 players, we've been doing the show all season long. There's only so much I can tell you about what we're trying to project out, especially when you have most of the world's best players in a condensed field with no cut. Don't really know what we're going to get at here. The greens are really small, 4,300 square feet. So you're going to miss a lot of greens. So if your green regulation rate can be very high, it's just going to save you a lot of problems when it comes to chipping or long putting. But just by and large, you'll see that number is a lot lower than you would normally think that it would be, because it all has to do with the size of the green. So where you could be 75 feet away from a hole on the green at LA Country Club or something like that, you're just not going to be on the green at this point in time for this tournament. So we can take a look back at what happened last year on the first leg of the FedEx Cup playoffs. Reminder, too, that this was a WGC for the 2 years previous before it switched over to the FedEx St. Jude Championship. It was the WGC St. Jude Championship. It's basically the same conceit. It just wasn't the first leg of the FedEx Cup playoffs. Zalatoris won a year ago. We'll take a look at the course as well. Let's sort by rank here. Yeah. You can see these double or worse. Actually, there's only 3 holes, 12, 18, which is the third and fourth and sixth hardest holes on the course. So 12, 18, and 14. 14's a par 3. Have a double or worse rate of over 5%. 12 coming in, clocking in at a hefty 7%. But the 2 hardest holes on the course, number 5 and number 17, bogey percentage of 27%, bogey percentage of 24%, and very minimal birdie percentage on those holes, 7.6, 10.1. When we think about where we want to go, you see a lot of these are par 4s between 400 that are over 450 yards. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 amongst the 9 hardest holes on the course. So you better believe we're going to be putting that into the modeling and try to find the players that at least tread water on those holes, and maybe some bogey avoidance stats to go in it as well. If we shrink down to the top 5 finishers over the years and get a sense of what they do well, it's approach. Over the course of the tournament, the average of the top 5 is 5 strokes gained on approach, 1.25, a stroke and a quarter per tournament, not even a stroke on the greens. And mainly when you take a look at it, ball striking does vastly outweigh short game. There are very few courses on the PGA Tour where you see, the disparity isn't that large, but you're gaining 1.75 strokes between driving and approach and only 1.25 between chipping and putting. So, and that's amongst the top 5 finishers. So you can really see the better ball strikers really come to the top in this tournament. It's pretty flat across par 3s, par 4s, and par 5s as it pertains to where you want to gain your strokes. And as I showed you, there's 6 holes. 6 of the 7 over 450 yards are 6 of the 9 hardest holes on the course. So you're going to want to be good from that range, which means you're going to want to be good from 150 to 200. You can see the 150 to 175 bucket at Southwind is 26%. The PGA Tour average is 20%, whereas 175 to 200, the average on tour is 17.5%, where this week it's 22%. You just don't see as many 200-yard plus approaches this week. There's only 2 par 5s and only 1 par 3 over 200 yards. And even on one of those par 5s, it has an eagle rate of like 3.5%. With a bomb drive, you can get inside 200 yards on your approach shot. So the longer iron less important this week, which is why we've seen different types of players. Like we've seen Chez Reavie do well here. We've seen John Rahm do well here. Brooks Koepka do well here. Lucas Glover and Brian Harman. It's real hodgepodge of who has their overall game and especially their irons and potentially a hot putter rolling at that time. As I mentioned, driving accuracy a little bit down, 56% versus 62% at tour average, but the green regulation rate just below 60%. The average on tour, 66%. Again, that's because of the small greens. Scrambling, quite easy. Very few three putts. Again, a product of the smaller greens. Driving distance higher than normal, just marginally by 3 yards. And because of the small greens, you're going to have an average green and regulation proximity to the hole much lower than you would at other tournaments. Take a look back at last year. I think we all remember. I mean, most of us did bet Will Zalatoris, so that was good news. He won at -15 over Seb Straka. In a playoff, the Glove and Brian Harmon were T3. Then you had like 8 guys tied for 5th. Scott, Finau, Putnam, Matt Fitzpatrick, John Rahm, Colin Morikawa. Trey Mullenix was up there. We were riding some for him with Trey. Trey Day. Happy Trey Day. And it was going to be a happy trade. He had a terrible chip on the par 5 and just kind of blew it. I really needed that solo top 5 on his each way because I think he was like 175 to 1. He was kind of in the mix for a little while too, but just could not come through. And then that each way just got split down so horribly. Taking a look at the strokes gained this week and the distribution of where we've seen those, you see Will Zalatoris did it the way that I talked about earlier. Ball striking, ball striking, ball striking. 7.7 strokes on approach, almost 2 off the tee. Gained 2.5 on the greens. That's great. And just broke even around the greens. And we'll see a lot of that in that context once we look back throughout the years. Scott was not able to gain strokes on approach, but more than made up for it, gaining almost 9 strokes with his short game. Probably not repeatable. Same as Putnam. Putnam did come second here to Dustin Johnson. I believe it was 2017. Might have been 2019, back before it was a WGC. Dustin won by a whole bunch, but he had the walk-off on the 72nd hole. Eagle from the middle of the fairway. Water for DJ. Walked off. Live guys, the guys who went to Live have actually played really well at this event over the years. You see Matt Fitzpatrick, John Rahm, and Colin Morikawa all finished T5 as well. Rahm did not gain any strokes putting that week. So he was right around break even, did great driving, little less on approach, decent chipping, but just couldn't gain enough strokes putting to really come through. You can see Theegala had a terrible approach week. We'll see how he's going too. Lee Hodges actually played well at this tournament last year too. Other than that, we just scroll down to the bottom. We had a couple missed cuts down here, but who else? Like Bezadenhout made the cut, Fowler made the cut, but didn't perform all that well. Svensson ended up making the cut. Lowry's not even going to make the FedEx Cup playoffs at this point, so I guess we don't even really need to worry about him. One weird thing because of implementation and nomenclature this year, because it switched from a WGC to a FedEx Cup playoff event, that when we kind of go through and take a look at everything, it's going to be a little bit janky. You'll want to go back to the 2021, and then we'll be on St. Jude because you're going to get mixed with like the Northern Trust and stuff like that, just because when the PGA gives us its feed, it just, because when they have that bad habit of saying, oh, here's the tournament record, but it was like not at the same course because of the playoffs are structured like that. It's just wonky when it comes down to it. So it's no longer called the Northern Trust, but you're going to get Northern Trust stats if you look back at it. If we want to go to the field history, go to WGC St. Jude, and that should help us out a little bit. We see in 2021, that was an Abraham Answer win in a 3-man playoff with Hideki Matsuyama and Sam Burns. Harris English just missed the playoff that year. Then a bunch of live guys. Then you had Rory, Spieth, Scheffler. I mean, Scheffler's just pulled his classic Scheffler stuff at this course over the years where, he's going to gain a bunch of strokes tee to green, then lose them all on the greens. Justin Thomas won here in 2020, so we can take a look at a few of those ones. As it was a World Golf Championship, you see Answer just kind of gained across the board. No one inside the top 5, except for Cameron Smith, classic Cameron Smith stuff here, where he loses strokes on approach and gains almost 10 with his short game. But everyone else who finished inside the top 5, Berger, RIP, Paul Casey, English, Matsuyama, Burns, and Answer all gained at least 4.1 strokes on approach. And Burns lost off the tee, Casey lost off the tee, but everyone else was gaining in that regard. And most of them, except for Matsuyama, Hideki should have won. He just lost strokes putting that week. If McIlroy wasn't so bad on and around the greens, he wins this tournament. Hideki was 13.2 strokes gained tee to green. Rory was 9.6 strokes tee to green and lost almost 3 in one component when it comes to chipping. 6 off the tee, 6.5 on approach. It's a very good ball striking week for Rory McIlroy when we go back and zoom around to it. But you can see Cam Smith, Zal is just injured. Bryson, Poulter, Dustin, all live guys. Now, Bobby Mack actually played well at that WGC, but we're not even going to be seeing him anymore. Louis, Wolf, Neiman, Nah, all players who went to Live. This is kind of like the Live Open, funnily enough, when we take a look at it. Let's try to take a look at 2020 and see what happened that year. This was the Justin Thomas year. Tom Lewis finished inside the top 2. But you can see Brooks and Thomas. I remember because I bet Brooks this week. He lost 2.7 strokes putting, lost by a stroke to Justin Thomas. Justin Thomas lost 2 strokes putting and won the tournament. Shez Reavie lost almost 5. Also bet him that week. Gained 12.2 tee to green, but lost 5 on the greens to come T6. Then a bunch of Live guys. Koepka, Phil, Louis are all mixed in there. Ben Ann might be actually someone to pay attention to. We just know his tee to green has been so good over the past whatever it might be at this point. We know that he's getting better on the greens, but he's not great on the greens. Fowler, too, has had some decent run at this tournament in terms of finishes, but we've never really seen it pop for him in terms of tee to green, and that's really where I'd want to be focusing on this week. When Brooks won, he gained almost 10 strokes putting the year that he won. He's kind of ran away with it. Webb, Leishman, another Live guy. Rory, Fleetwood, Fitzpatrick, Rahm, Poulter, Bubba Watson. Horschel. Horschel will be really interesting. He played this tournament really well back before it was a WGC or a playoff event. And if he can get himself into the playoffs, it probably means he's coming in riding a win. And we know that when Horschel catches fire, he catches a lot of fire, hot fire, and continues on his way. Aaron Rai, if it's going to be a course where the ball strike, he obviously flamed out at the Wyndham, so no one's going to want him anymore. I think he's going to be like 66th or 65th in the FedEx Cup standing, so he should be in. If he can just gain a stroke putting and just do his regular thing, he should be good at this tournament. You see a lot of Spieth just kind of lingering around. Louis kind of lingered around throughout the years. Putnam's had some good runs here, so maybe Putnam is someone to put back on your radar. You would think that if Answer played well here, and some of it was due to putting, that Connors should play well here, because I would just have those two linked in my mind a lot of the time. Let's get to the modeling, though, and see what we can drum up here. At the past 24 rounds selected, let's go to the custom stat model and see if we can find St. Jude. St. Jude, quality. Well, gotta like that. So here's what I've done in the past. Ball striking, 20%. And keep hammering down on ball striking, meaning approach is 15. Off the tee is 10. Greens and regulations gained 10%. Putting, 10%. Par 4s overall, 15%. Let's move that down to 10% and put the key par 4 range up to 10% from 5%, 450 to 500 opportunities gained. So those birdie makers, you got to make birdies. It's not like, the winning score is like minus 15. It's been minus 19, minus 12 in the past. Got to make your birdies. So opportunities gained, 5%. Then we'll double back down on driving with driving distance gained and fairways gained at both 5%. Don't want to be in that water is what I'm telling you right now. Don't want to be making those big numbers because all of a sudden you will not be advancing to the BMW Championship. My rank over the past 24 rounds, how many do we go down to with this? We have 80 right now on Fantasy National. Obviously, that will get updated on Monday once we actually know the standings, but Moose was good enough to put some extra guys in there who are on the periphery of where everyone is going. See, even Justin Thomas is in there right now. Good for him. Xander is the best player in the field by these metrics over Rory, Cantlay, Scheffler, and Windy C. Then you got Hatton, Hovland, Tommy, Alex Smalley, and Ricky Fowler round out the top 10. Now, obviously, there's no strokes gained from the Open Championship, so Rahm gets hurt a little bit, but he still comes in at 11th. Connors, Hideki, Morikawa, and Vince Norman, should he be able to get in. We can take a look at Rahm over time. We can take a look at the WGC. At the St. Jude, he came 52nd in 2020. He was 7th in 2019. If we just go to St. Jude, you can see that last year he was 5th despite losing 0.1 of a stroke on the greens, but it was great tee to green. So it might just be a time for Rahm to get it all back together. If Rahm can win one of these playoff events, he's going to win. He's probably the front runner to win Player of the Year anyway, but he can really, a win at the Masters, a second at the Open Championship, and 4 wins overall is probably good enough. Unless Scheffler can go out or Clark can go out and get themselves a win here, I think it just is Jon Rahm's to lose, although he hasn't really done much outside of this runner-up at the Open Championship, basically since the Masters. He has a runner-up in Mexico. Who cares about that? But it's been kind of strange with him. Going down the list, like the quote-unquote worst players that we see, Connors is still even out there. I feel like Connors hasn't done anything since the PGA Championship when he kind of gagged it away. I guess he was 9th at the Travelers, 20th in Canada, and he came 12th at the PGA Championship, but he was actually in the mix to win it that day till he completely melted down. He just has not been playing a lot of golf, although the approach play has been pretty good. It was even pretty good at the U.S. Open. So let's see. Never really had a good, you cannot figure out these greens to save his life. Has never gained strokes putting. We'll see how he did last year in the playoffs. St. Jude, he actually did gain strokes last year and gained a bunch off the tees. That was his best finish, was last year when he came T28. So not a ton to write home about when it comes to Corey Connors. Rose is still up there. Rye and Henley. So we saw that Rye popped up a few times. We'll take a look at Denny McCarthy. We saw that Lee Hodges actually had a pretty decent one. This feels like a course where Keegan should be really good overall. Very accurate off the tee. He can get so hot with his approaches. I mean, the putting has been excellent for him. So we'll see WGC St. Jude over the years. 52nd, 61st, lost over 7 strokes on 6 on approach and 7 putting. It's a bad week for old Keegs. In the past, last year he missed the cut at this event, lost 3.5. So maybe he just doesn't have these greens figured out whatsoever. But ball striking wise, he should very much be in the mix at this tournament. So St. Jude, Lee Hodges was 13th last year, couldn't gain a stroke on the greens. I doubt he ever played in the He never played in a WGC, so we don't really need to worry about him. Denny screwed everyone at the Wyndham Championship and was 20th at this tournament last year. If he can keep up that was all chipping and putting like it normally is with Denny, but I can see him being relatively unpopular this week, mainly because he screwed everyone last week. We'll see. It's going to be price point dependent for him. Let's see. Was he ever in a WGC? No. Jude. In the St. Jude Classic, he was 18th in 2018, where he gained 5 on there. So in 2 appearances at this tournament, he's averaging over 4 strokes putting. So over a stroke per round on the greens in each over his 8 rounds. On approach, he actually did pretty well against a much weaker field in 2018, mind you, but was able to get it on the go a little bit. Take a look at Henley and take a look at his St. Jude stuff. Missed the cut last year, was 7th in 2016. So not really any great shakes for him. Didn't play it as a WGC. Aaron Rye, we did see him play it as a WGC. He played it twice as a WGC. Came 26th and came 12th. I don't believe he qualified. He did qualify for the playoffs last year. Came 51st, mediocre across the board. Couldn't chip to save his life. But theoretically, the way that he plays should come out. And like Denny, kind of screwed a lot of people at the Wyndham who put a lot of faith in him. So that's just something that we can take a look at of guys who are lower down but rate out really well over the past 24 rounds. We'll see Tom Kim back in action. He skipped the Wyndham. He will be playing this week. Griot is someone that on paper this should really suit, I think. I mean, he did have the 6th at the Open. That was great. He was 10th the week after that in Minnesota. So he's either been great or missing the cuts at places. We'll see his St. Jude record, 31st last year and 66th in 2018 as a WGC. Terrible approach numbers, but great putting numbers. But as you can see, by and large, when he gets it going, you're going to have those great approach numbers that we can get through. So Griot, we can kind of put on the back burner as well. We'll take a look at Morikawa too. This, like a lot of courses over the past 2 years that should have suited Morikawa, this one where putting you can lean back a little bit. Although, as you can see, outside of the Open, the putter's actually been good for Morikawa recently. And the ball striking is coming back. He can ball strike the shit out of the ball. That's what we're looking for. So he's basically off the tee has been great. Approach has been great 1 year, good 1 year, and mediocre field average the other year. But he has a 20th, 26th, and 5th. Has gained on the green 2 of the 3 years. Good to see. It'd be a nice spot for him to get right. We were all kind of back on him at the Open. I didn't bet him, but played him on DraftKings, and he absolutely screwed me. But the second at the Rocket Mortgage was nice to see, especially if he's gaining strokes putting. Maybe the Open just wasn't for him at this venue, although some of us thought that it would be. This would be a get-right spot for him, especially if he does have his accuracy dialed back in with his driver. Then he's just going to avoid a lot of those landmines that pop up. Let's shrink the size down, sample size that is, to the past 12 rounds when we look at this model and see if there's anything that sticks out in particular. Rory, Scheffler, Fowler, Smalley, Vince Norman become the top 5 over the past 12 rounds. Morikawa boosts up to 6th. Cantlay, Hatton, Fleetwood, Victor inside the top 10. It might just be a Morikawa Victor week for me here and see if those guys can get it rolling. Take a look at Vic's stats. Harman comes in number 11 once we get past that. But how have we been doing with Vic? He's just been kind of mediocre. I mean, good. Obviously, a 13th at the Open is nothing to sneeze at. Neither is a top 25 at the Scottish. But for a while, he was just kind of running train through the very top of leaderboards and being in contention every single week. We just haven't seen that as often from Vic. When we think about fairways gained, Morikawa and Fleetwood are 2nd and 9th. Then you have Henley, Denny, and Jordan Spieth, out of all people. Those are the guys inside the top 10 from the very top, and Harman as well, who rates out 12th in that number. But just outside names that you see up there, Jaeger is up there inside the top 15 overall. Hideki remains inside the top 15. Henley, Denny, Keegan Bradley. Keith Mitchell all of a sudden is there. Okay, that's interesting to see. Cam Davis is up there as well, and it looks like he may sneak in to the FedEx Cup playoffs just by the skin of his teeth on this one. Brandon Wu and Lee Hodges will be up there. Justin Rose, although he's been very disappointing as of late. Doesn't seem like Higo is going to play himself in, although it does seem like he's actually in a pretty good spot at this tournament when we think back to the last 12 rounds or so. The 400 to 50 yard coming in. Xander's the best. Hatton's up there. Keith Mitchell and Smalley both, again, with Lee Hodges and JT Poston. Hodges better in the longer term than the shorter term, but obviously he just won an event, so it's looking pretty good for him. Sam Stevens up there as well in terms of the 450 to 500 yard, what we're looking at. In terms of overall strokes gained off the tee, you can see Rory and Scheffler are up there, but they're both outside the top 60 of a field of 70 players in terms of fairways gained. So that's not great. Hovland, Higo, and Norman are all inside the top 30 in accuracy, as are Siwoo, Spieth, and Fleetwood. They're inside the top 10, each of those three in terms of accuracy, and that's where they're doing most of their damage off the tee. You can see Spieth in particular, top 30, and Fleetwood, top 30 in terms of driving distance, top 10 in terms of fairways. Other than that, you have like Hatton, who's up there in driving distance, same as Keith Mitchell, up there in driving distance around field average in terms of fairways, and then Spawn, great at fairways, less good at driving distance. I feel like he was up there last year too, coming down the stretch. Maybe I just have him mixed up with Seb Straka. I feel like something very bad happened to him in the final round, or Saturday. I think he was the 36-hole leader last year. What the hell happened to Spawn last year? Oh yeah, 78 in the final round will kind of cook you. That's how he came T42, but he had been up there. How has Spawn played this course over the years? And like, what the hell is he doing coming in? He's just been kind of out of sight, out of mind for me. Nothing, no top 20 since the Century, where he came 5th last year, and that's what he's riding in, if he's in at all. But the ball striking's been really good overall. The putting has been an abject failure, and he's played TPC Southwind once, and it was last year, and had 3 excellent rounds, was one of the final groups, and then pissed it all away in the final round by shooting 8 over and finishing outside the top 40. But that's kind of masking 3 really good rounds that he had. I have no idea if he is in or not. Where is Spawn currently at? Spawn is now 70th in the FedEx Cup standing, so something to keep in mind and monitor if he can get himself in. Spawn might not be the worst of plays this week. So that's going to do it for the preview for TPC Southwind. Not as long as normal. We just don't have the same amount of players, and we've been spending all season long talking about the guys at the very top. I don't need to tell you that John Rahm and Scotty Scheffler and Rory are great players. They might fit well with this course. Yeah, no shit, Pat. Thanks for telling us. But what you can do is put some of this advice, or maybe the anti-advice of this show, into practice in the Pat Mayo Experience Listeners League. Link is available right now, 2,500 spots. I assume it's going to fill quickly, it being likely the last one of the year. So go get those spots. The NFL Week 1 Listeners League is available right now, too. If you want to start making lines for that, head on over to runthesims.com/Mayo, code Mayo, if you just want to go to Run the Sims, for the DFS product and the betting product. It's just a simulator. It will run projections for you. It will run custom projections and custom simulations for you. I highly recommend it. I think it's a fantastic tool. I had my best year ever. I ended up like 20 Gs in NFL last year. It was fucking fantastic. And I'm going to need to do that again. Well, I don't need to do that again in order to make up for all my PGA losses. But, if I can win like $5,000 on NFL PGA or NFL DFS this year on DraftKings, then I'll be up for the year, which will be really nice because it has not been a great year. Some decent scores in PGA, but a lot of losing. But that's kind of the case for everyone when it comes to PGA. It's a big crapshoot. And if you don't have one of those big scores, it's really hard to turn your entire season around. And hey, maybe I'll win the Listeners League for St. Jude. Who knows? That's just something to look at. But overall, I would just say take your ball strikers, hope to get lucky with putting, and boom, we'll be on our way. Thank you all for watching. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
That Mayo experience! Experience!